Welcome to our second Time to Talk podcast. I've got three special guests with us today. If we go around and introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Mary and I am an apprentice for Dudley Council and I work in the Connecting Families team for young people and I am a care leaver myself.
Great, thank you.
Hello, I'm Sam and I'm a care leaver apprentice in fostering and recruitment.
Hello, I'm Lewis and I'm a care leaver as well. I'm an apprentice at Dudley as well.
So, if we start with Mary, could you tell us a time when you haven't felt great with your mental health?
Yes, I struggled with my weight when I was about 14 years old and there was a lot of online nasty comments and stuff. You could say bullying in a way. But that just motivated me to become a better version of myself. So it motivated me to lose a lot of weight. But I think there is definitely a lot of negative effects on social media because it did have a big effect on my social life at the time, my well-being. There's always a lot of hate anyway. Whether you're a famous person or whether you're just a normal young person from Dudley, there's always going to be nasty comments and hateful comments. Yeah, there's a lot of online trolls. It's normalised in this day and age and it shouldn't be.
So did you report the kind of bullying that you're experiencing then?
No, I didn't.
And do you mind me asking what kind of things?
Yeah, they used to call me fat and thunder thighs. It wasn't nice, to be honest, at all.
And was there anybody that you told how you were feeling?
No, I just used it to motivate myself to become a better person and it worked. I changed. And then the people that used to be horrible to me now call me pretty, but they can't talk to me now anyway because you're not going to forget who kicked you when you was down, do you know what I mean? It's not just young people that get these nasty comments, it's like really pretty celebrities, like celebrities with a lot of plastic surgery and stuff. Like no matter who you are, even when I had more weight to myself, I was having nasty comments, and now that I've lost weight, I still have nasty comments. Like, you can't win in this day and age. It's bound to happen at some point. You've just got to not let it affect you mentally because it's normalised and it shouldn't be.
So you're saying it shouldn't be normalised, but what do you think could be done to improve that so it doesn't happen, so it's not acceptable?
See, like Facebook has, you can't really, on Facebook you can get banned now for harassment and bullying or violence or anything really you can get banned for. If Facebook thinks that you're being nasty to another person, that will ban you. So maybe like other social media sites should start doing that too.
It affects males as well. Like, I've seen stuff on social media of people from Aston Villa. If they play bad in their game, they get abuse, and like it's forced many professionals to actually delete social media and just come off it just because of the abuse that they get. So it happens to everyone, no matter how famous you are. It can happen to anyone.
I feel like when you love yourself to a certain extent, like no one can really come in your way because you've got so much walls up and a guard up that like little comments that usually would affect you if you didn't love yourself won't affect you now. Do you know what I mean? Because you don't need that negativity because you love yourself enough to know that it's nothing, they're no one. Do you know what I mean? And people that hate aren't happy. People that are being horrible to another person aren't happy at all. It's just like a sign that they're unhappy within themselves. So they're trying to drag other people down. Whereas like happy people don't hate.
It sounds like you kind of turned your life around and you begun to love yourself. So what happened for you to love yourself? What was it, a particular person, or was it what changed to make that?
I broke up with my boyfriend. I think it was my first heartbreak when I was like 16. I was proper like young and in love. And he cheated on me with a girl that was like 10 times thinner than me. At the time I thought she was prettier than me. Like, I used to compare myself a lot, but as I've got older I learned not to do that. Like, don't compare myself to nobody because they're not me. But yeah, and plus all the hate and stuff, like the names he used to call me, it just made me want to better myself anyway as a person. Sometimes it gets hard. I don't love myself as much as I used to. Like, my confidence gets knocked sometimes, but like I still come back to, you know, loving myself and not letting nobody else bring me down because I'm not that person no more. Nasty comments can't affect me. So I know that person isn't happy within themselves. If you're hating on somebody else, you can't be happy. I'm at peace with myself and they're in pieces, do you know what I mean? Because I'll look at the person that's knocked my confidence and I'm just, you're not enough to knock my confidence anyway. You have your own flaws, but I'm not going to point them out because that's not the person I am. Like I said, if anyone's being horrible to you or anyone's hating on you, then they're not happy within themselves to be trying to drag another person down. Because I'm not that type of girl that will judge someone for the way they look, because I know that people can't control that and we all have our own flaws, so why would you dig at somebody else's flaws when you know how it feels to not like a certain thing about your body? You're not going to drag someone else down if you're a nice person, do you know what I mean? You're not happy if you do that. If you feel the need to go about your day and hurt somebody's feelings, pick on somebody's flaw, knowing that they're probably not confident anyway, then you're unhappy in yourself, because why would you do that to someone else? Even at 19 years old, I'm coming 20 next month, and I've experienced a lot of, could say, like being pushed out by certain people, not feeling accepted, not feeling like you fit in with a group of people. And to be honest, now that I'm 20, it does not bother me one bit, because I'm like, well, you know what, like, when I think about it, I don't even really want to fit in, do you know what I mean? I've never been the type to force myself to fit in. I'll sit on my own if I have to, and I'll stick to my guns, do you know what I mean? It's all part of loving yourself. I love myself that much that I don't actually need a group of friends. I don't need to feel secure in a group of girls that don't want me to be in with them, do you know what I mean? So I'm not going to beg for friends, because I don't really want friends. I'm nearly 20 years old. I've got enough friends anyway, like. But in the younger mindset, it probably does make you feel not good, but as you get older, you're going to realise that, like, not everyone's your friend, and you don't actually have to fit in. You just have to be yourself, because if you can't accept yourself for who you are, then you're going to have trouble for your whole life. Like, it took me nearly 2 decades to realise that, do you know what I mean? And now my mind's just trained. My mind's stronger than my emotions and that. So I recommend anyone struggling with their mental health or confidence to read The Secret, because it changed my whole mentality. It changed the way I think.
So do you want to talk a little bit about The Secret and the Law of Attraction? Because I've heard about it, but...
Yeah, it's basically a book based on your feelings, how to train your mind. In general, it just basically shows you that loving yourself, your confidence, your well-being, your mental health starts within you. You can't rely on no one else. Like, when you train your mind to be that powerful, you can achieve anything that you actually want to achieve. Like, you just got to have that vision in your head. No negative thoughts. You got to lock the negative thoughts off and think positive constantly, even when you don't want to. If you think positive and you think you can do something, you can actually train your mind to do that. You just got to put your mind to it. It's a mind game.
And it's had a big effect on yourself?
Yes, it changed my whole mentality and the way that I think. I'm glad that I read it. I read it when I was in a bad place as well with my mental health and stuff, and it just changed my whole perspective and the way I think. So definitely recommend that book.
If you've gone to Lewis, could you give us an example where you've not been feeling in a great place with your mental health?
For me, it was in secondary school when I lost my mum, and everything from my childhood just came out, and a lot of it came out in anger, and it kind of messed up a year or so my high school, and I missed a lot out, and that led to me obviously not passing my exams and failing a lot of things. Things that helped me in school were this teacher. She was like a PA teacher, and without her I would have been kicked out of school. She was the one that was there fighting for me, and without her I probably wouldn't be where I am now.
So what was it that teacher did?
She was there just to support me, and whenever I was feeling down or angry, she gave me a place to go, and she's just always been there. She was like a PA teacher, but she's more than that to me. Like, she's done more than any other person for me, to be honest. I mean, now I'm working with her. She works at the council as well. So.
Oh, wow. So you've kept in touch. And does she know how you feel, how important she was in your life?
Yeah, I've spoke to her about it, and I've told people about my relationship with her, and it's powerful.
That's really good to hear. So when this happened, how old were you then?
14. It happened in the school holidays, and then after that, everything just went downhill until like late on year 10. And that's when I just tried my best to just get my head down, because the school said to me if I didn't, then I couldn't go to prom. I'd have to leave the school. So at that point I was like, well, I don't want to leave, because this is where everything is for me. And if I was to leave, I would have just gone downhill more. So I had to pull myself together.
And you said it came out in a lot of anger. What other ways did it kind of show?
Well, when I get angry, it comes out. It's not as much anger; it's more that I'm upset. But it shows as anger.
Okay. And what about your friends at that time? Were they supportive, or did they not know, or what?
No, I had a group of friends, and I'm still close to them now. And without them, also like they were supportive. I could go out with them. I could speak to them about anything. So it's literally between my mates and that teacher.
So that's a different kind of story to what Mary said. Mary relied very much on herself to kind of turn things around, but you're saying the support that other people having that group, that network of friends and your teacher or professionals around you. Just thinking of other professionals, were there any social workers or anybody within the social care system that kind of helped you during that time?
There was a social worker, but she wasn't actually my social worker at the time. She was my mum's support worker, and after she passed, she came and looked after me and my sister for a bit. She just kind of came in every now and then, just checked we were okay, just took us out, spoke to us and everything like that.
Okay, and then obviously, is that when you came into care at that time?
No, when I came into care, I had a different social worker, and for an actual social worker, she was the best one for me because I went into care and she was the one that fought for me to go back to living with my nan and granddad.
And was there anything that she did particularly well around the way you were feeling and the difficulties you were experiencing at school?
Well, I mean, this was when it kind of just started to calm down a little bit, because when I went into care, that was when I realised that I have to sort myself out.
You know what? That is actually brave of Lewis for saying that, because if it was someone else, they'd be like breaking down in tears and things like that.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like it definitely takes a lot to speak about a sensitive subject like that so openly. And working with Lewis has been a journey, because I never actually knew what Lewis had gone through, but like he'll help anybody. He's so humble and down to earth. Whereas that situation could have turned somebody else cold. So yeah, he should be proud of himself.
I feel like he brightens up people's days as well. Every time he comes into the office.
Like, we're on that level 100%. Like, he's made me feel comfortable in a room full of people that are making me feel uncomfortable. Do you know what I mean? And not a lot of people would do that. So, you know.
That's nice words.
It's the truth.
If we go on to Sam, could you give us an example of one time when you wasn't in a great place with your mental health or your emotional well-being?
It's like I had similar to what Lewis had, but I had it with my dad when I was like 8. And in some respects, it affected my education in primary school, because I was like finishing off in year 5 at my one school. Then I had to go to another school and I was finishing off their year 5, going into year 6. And it's just like really mad how some people can have similar experiences to other people.
So can you remember when that happened though, when you were 8? Can you remember how you felt?
Obviously, like, sort of put me down a bit, because like I thought of what I wanted to be when I was older and like getting good grades, and I think like, because I just think, well, I'm never going to be able to do that, and I'm never going to be able to like achieve what I wanted to achieve.
And you've got brothers and sisters, have you?
Yeah.
And so what was the circumstances with them? Did you move to the same house or?
No, they was trying to find somewhere where we could all live like together. That was unable to happen. It's like me and my sister was put together, and then my other 2 brothers was put together. So it's just like travelling to like see them on like birthdays and things like that, and like saw my mum once a month on the last Saturday. Like obviously, like when we was at school, it was like different, because obviously we'd get picked up straight from school and go right to the contact centre. It was like just mad knowing that you're getting picked up and all my friends are walking past thinking, well, where are they going and things like that.
So can you remember how that made you feel, or did it make you feel different, or did anybody say anything to you? Like, were you bullied or anything?
Like, I wasn't really like bullied, because obviously like my mate asked me questions and things like that, and I told her like what I was going through, and like she told me what happened to her. It's just more or less similar to what I had, but obviously she wasn't like put in the care system and things like that.
Okay. It's really brave of you to kind of open up and share these experiences. It's really important for other young people to hear this, because there'll be so many other people in the same situation, but also for professionals to hear this as well. Was there anybody, like a teacher or anybody who helped when this was happening?
Not really. Moving from one school to another school, it's just like really mad how it can affect your education.
Okay, so Mary, could you tell us a bit about when you first came into care, how old you were and what that felt like, if you can remember?
Yes. So basically I was with my auntie to begin with, which was still classed as a family foster carer. I was 2 when I went to live with my auntie. She got custody over me and my one brother, but I also have 2 brothers that actually stayed in London. So one got adopted from birth, and my younger brother and my older brother was in and out of care homes around London. Whereas me and my brother that stayed together was going to get adopted, but my auntie went to court for us to get custody, and eventually she did. So I lived with my auntie up until I was 13, coming 14. Before I actually got put into proper foster care, we started it with respite to see if that would better the relationship between me and my auntie, because I wouldn't say we didn't get on, but I was like very troubled. So 50% of it was what I went through, and 50% of it was actually me looking for the wrong attention, because I was so troubled and traumatised from my past, which isn't always an excuse. It doesn't give you a reason to be a bad person, but I was young. It was like kind of like a stepping stone. So yeah, I was 14 when I actually moved to my first carers. It was just terrifying. It was like, you know, you feel out of place. You don't want to ask for too much. You don't ask for too less. It's hard accepting things off strangers. I remember when I first went to respite, and I'd literally cry all night. Like, I'd cry before I went to the placement. The whole journey there, I'd be crying, begging my auntie not to take me there. I'd cry before I went to bed. It literally got to the point where like the woman was thinking about moving me to another carer because I was that bad. Like, I just couldn't stop myself. But then after about 6 months to a year of getting to know this woman, I actually really enjoyed it. And then in the end, I didn't want to actually stop going to hers on weekends. It was crazy. You need someone who's going to understand and listen, someone that knows, you know, that it's a big thing to go through, because like you're literally moving in with a stranger. Like, yeah, there might be a foster carer for the local authority, but you don't know this person. I think something Dudley should definitely look into is maybe meet and greets or a video call or activities before moving into the foster carer's placement, just to, you know, get to know each other, rather than moving your stuff into a stranger's house, which is usually, your stuff is usually in black bags. Like, that was the hardest part for me, is like all my belongings in black bags, and I'm going to put it in someone else's house that I don't even know. So yeah, I think Dudley should definitely look into meet and greet sessions or something, because it's terrifying, especially for a young person like I was myself.
I'm glad to say that the black bag policy has changed now, and that shouldn't be happening at all. That was something that was introduced a few years ago. So what do you think foster carers can do to make that as less daunting as it can be when you first move in there?
Maybe meet and greet sessions, video calls, just generally getting to know each other. Yeah, like meet up a few times before actually shipping that child off into a stranger's home. Get to know the boundaries, the rules.
You could go to the park and have a picnic and things like that.
So
yeah, Dudley should fund something like that, like activities, meet the family, meet and greet who you're actually going to be around, you know what I mean, rather than just moving in with someone that you don't even know.
Sounds sensible to me. So, and then when it comes to that first night when you're going to stay, what could they do then to make it as welcoming?
Definitely activity, definitely, whether Dudley pay for it or not. Bowling, cinema, even just ordering food, like generally talking to each other, getting to know each other. Maybe the social worker or young person advisor, sit with them for an hour. Just make them feel as comfortable as possible.
So if we move on to you, Sam, so can you remember when you first came into care? What was that like?
Obviously, like, it was like really scary and like nervous, because it was like going into like a stranger's home, and being as like we weren't like introduced until like we got there and didn't like know anything. Because obviously like the day we more or less turned up was the day the foster care was like sort of going on holiday. So I was like, she couldn't really go on the holiday because having me and my sister. But then they also took me and my sister to where my brothers was also staying as well. Because obviously the plan was for all 4 of us to be together, but being as it like wasn't possible, it was like me and my sister and then my 2 brothers elsewhere, and it's just like mad.
Can you remember that first night there? So you were with your sister.
Yeah.
But what feelings were you going through? Can you remember?
The first night there, I was like crying, and all I wanted was like my dad. Because obviously my dad had just passed. I wanted my dad, and like I couldn't really cope. Like, my sister sort of had to get the foster carers. She like just put the telly on and like sat on the end of my bed until I went to sleep. It was like really nice to have that comfort.
Okay. And then over time, you got on well with your carers. Is that right?
Yeah, like after we'd lived there for so long, we like managed to get like all our passports done, and so then we could go on holidays together. And it's like our first holiday was like Tunisia, and it was like really good, and taking us to like new places places where we've never been before and things like that is really amazing.
Brilliant. So you were saying that was really comforting that first night that we sat with you to kind of reassure you and stuff. Is there anything that you could give as a tip to either foster carers or to social workers that they could do when there's somebody new coming into care, what they can do to make that kind of as less horrible as possible?
You could have like a little, not like a party as such, but like a little like gathering sort of thing to like welcome you into their home. And because like I feel like that it's nice for them to welcome kids into their home and not just like turn up out of the blue and like give them more of a warning if they're booked a holiday. It's just a matter of like just doing them things, because it's really nice to sort of like bond with the family. And
okay, and are you still in touch with your carers now? Or?
Yeah, I still like see them, and
She literally left their house this morning.
yeah, it's like because I go on a Friday and come back Monday, I spend like the whole weekend with them. It's like even when they've got the grandson there and they've got the other two foster children as well, and like I help out with them, and it's just really helpful to them at the end of the day. And like for them being a familiar face, it's just really
And that's
nice.
what I was saying earlier about it being more than a job to some people. Like some people are actually in it to help better this child's life, like what a foster carer should be. So like you left how many years ago? How many years ago
when I
did
was
you leave that
18.
placement? And now
I was
you're
18,
21,
and now I'm 20.
21. The fact that they're still bothering with her is really nice. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
That's good to hear.
because like they still like care about me. I class like my foster carer as like a mum and dad, and then their daughter and that I class them as like a second auntie and uncle.
Ah, it's lovely. That's good to hear. So, Lewis, can you tell us a little bit about when you first came into care, how old you were in?
When I first came into care, I was 15, so it was just after my mum passed. I kind of got neglected by my family, and the first placement wasn't very good at all, to be honest. It was a bit out of the way from where I was used to living, and I didn't get on with them all. And then the second placement that I went to, it was a bit better, but it kind of broke down after a bit. I don't know, it just kind of made me work harder to get myself into a better place so I could go back to living with my family.
Can you remember how you felt during those placements? Did you feel kind of on your own, or was there somebody you could turn to for help to kind of talk about how you were feeling or anything?
A lot of the time I spent in my room, to be honest. For that most of that year, I didn't really do anything. I just stayed in my room.
Was there any adults around that you kind of knew how you were feeling? So like a social worker or an advocate?
Only after the first placement, after going to the second placement, the social worker that helped a lot came in, and that was only when I could do things and start working on myself to just come better and return with my family.
So when you were meeting your social worker in that first placement, you wasn't having a good time there, it wasn't going well. What were those conversations like with your social worker?
It was a different social worker. I never saw them then. I never saw one. I'd been told after that they'd left and no one had contacted me for months.
I'm really sorry to hear that, Lewis. That obviously shouldn't have been the case. So how did that make you feel if you've just come into care and you're not regularly having any contact with a social worker to kind of share how you're feeling and to say that it's not going well?
Oh, I mean, up until then I didn't really have a good social worker, so I didn't mind not seeing one, to be honest.
And then you moved to the second placement where you did have a social worker you've seen sometimes.
Yeah, she came in and she helped me do things the right way. It helped me in school. She took me out, she came, visited me and made sure I was okay, everything like that. And she was the reason that I came out of that placement back into my family.
So that was a positive experience from that social worker.
And like, she was actually one of the only ones that actually told me not long after I went back to my nan and granddad's that she was leaving, and she actually came and said bye and everything. That makes a difference. Like normally it is really annoying when social workers just come and then leave and don't say anything.
Yeah.
You have to find out weeks or months later.
It's like I had some who would just like come and say goodbye, but some would just like wouldn't even do that. They'd, I'm going in a couple of weeks, and then you expect them to come and do their last final visit and then they don't even turn up. So it's really shocking, really, the amount of social workers that actually do their job properly, because at the end of the day they need to be more focused on what they're there to do, not to just like say that you're going in a couple of weeks and then you don't even come out to go and have a goodbye visit, especially when you've known the child for like how many years.
Mary, have you got any experiences of changing social workers?
Yes, I've got plenty because I was in the system since I was 2 years old. child, so I had at least about 20 social workers in my time, and I can honestly say only one actually changed my life. The rest of them, I don't know what was going on, to be honest. I feel like I've said before, it's a job to some people, and then there's some social workers that are generally in it for the kids' sake. But yeah, I feel like they should definitely, if a child's going to have a social worker, at least let them stick around for a year before moving them in. I think 1 year I had about 4 social workers in a year. Getting used to someone new, explaining yourself to someone new, getting to know someone all over again ain't really healthy if you've been through a lot. So you're talking about things that have traumatised you to get to know this person, rather than them just reading you off a piece of paper. Like you're trying to get this person to know who you are and understand you, so you're going to have to go into detail for that to happen. Nobody wants to keep bringing up the past to strangers, so I feel like they should definitely look at permanency in a social worker, or at least a fallback social worker, so someone that they can meet, and if their social worker leaves, then they could potentially have this social worker until they get to know another one. Yeah, it's not healthy to be moved around and explain yourself multiple times to people. Nobody wants to keep bringing up the past.
So you said that one social worker had a really positive impact on you.
Yes.
What did they do that was different to the other ones?
He
What
listened
made them
to me. He listened to me. He was my voice as well. So when everyone was making me out to be vulnerable, he knew, because he actually took the time out to get to know me. He knew that I was worth more. I wasn't this vulnerable child that was making me out to be. I wasn't actually happy, and that's why I was made out to be vulnerable. He listened to me, understood, he comforted me, and in the end he changed my life. So that's the only social worker I can honestly say I respect.
So Sam, have you got an example of a good social worker and what made them good?
Yeah, because like my first social worker, I had her since I was like basically born, because like she like helped my mum and like had to cope with the two of us. And obviously there was only me and my sister born at the time. Things had happened in the past before I was born, and it's like we knew her like for a really long time. We got on really well. She would sometimes like do things with us, and while my mum did other things in the house, she would like talk to us. It was like really nice, because like we knew her for like so long, and then when we was put into foster care, she said she was leaving, and we was like quite gutted that she was leaving, actually, because she was like one of the best social workers, because like we didn't want her to leave, because she was like the best one we'd ever had since we was all kids.
Thanks for that. That sounds like you've had a positive experience there. Moving on to Lewis. So have you got an example of a good social worker, a good experience with a social worker?
As I mentioned earlier, the one in the second placement that was probably one of the best social workers for me. She actually just took the time to get to know me. She took me out, did activities. The fact that she was actually taking the time, that she actually helped me progress in myself more than anything.
And I think you said earlier that didn't give up on you either.
Yeah, a lot of things were happening at that time, so it could have been very easy for her to just leave like the others, or just not put in as much effort, but she just helped me get to a better place and get back to my family. So.
And was that the one who stayed with you for the rest of your time when you were in care?
No, she left after I went back to my nan and granddad's.
Right, okay. So if you talk a little bit about life story work, so Lewis, have you ever had any life story work?
No, I've never had any life story work at all, to be honest. No.
Nothing at all?
No.
Okay, what about Mary?
Yes, I had a life story book when I was about 12 years old, but it was all sugar-coated, like there wasn't actually much detail in there. Same when I got my files when I was 18. There was nothing in there that I didn't already know, really. I think there's about 2 things that I didn't know, but I could have guessed anyway. So like, I think they should definitely go deeper. Like, I'm going to be wondering what happened. Do you know what I mean? I want to know where I come from, what actually happened in detail. I don't want to know bits that I already know. Like, I just want to know what happened to me, what happened to my siblings, like why did this outcome become that outcome, do you know what I mean? Rather than just what I already knew from a young age. So yeah, it was quite annoying that they didn't put more detail, more effort into it. Yeah, I just feel like they could have done more.
So you've accessed your records though?
And everything I already knew was in there. They even got things mixed up, like they even thought my older brother was my younger brother. So they were saying like Mary's brother is this many years old, when really that's my older brother. Like, it was
so there was
crazy.
errors in that. So,
yeah.
And it didn't give you the answers that you really...
Definitely not.
Sam, have you had any life story work?
Yeah, and I did mine, because obviously at the time I wasn't really ready to like talk about my dad, so like they just typed it up and like printed it off, laminated it, and like just gave it me in an envelope until I was ready to read it. So like anything about my dad wasn't really included in my life story. It was just in an envelope, and they gave it me until I was ready to read it. So I did one in like primary school, which was like my All About Me one, and then the other one I did in secondary school as well. I had a separate person to what my sister had to do my life story, which really isn't right, because I just presumed I'd have the same person as my sister doing all of us. But it turns out that the one my sister had was leaving, and then I think my brothers had a separate one to me as well, because the one I had was leaving as well. So like, I don't think even my sister got anything about my dad when she did hers, which is really bad. It's like they all asked me if I had anything about my dad, because I didn't really have it, and I was the only person who did. And I was thinking, well, I gave it them to read as well. At the end of the day, they should know all this from theirs.
Have any of you got any experiences of things that you found out later on that you weren't told at the time?
The local authority did not let me know that my dad had passed away till like 2 years after, which really affected my whole mentality. I wasn't able to go to his funeral due to social services not letting us know in time. So yeah, I feel like I definitely missed out on a lot, and we should have been informed before 2 years.
I had a similar experience with my granddad, because the social worker was meant to be telling us that my granddad had passed the year after, but if it wasn't for my mum, when we saw her the last Saturday of the month, and she like sort of told us that my granddad had died, and we was questioning my mum, saying, you know, oh, well, why weren't we invited to the funeral? You know, why did we attend? Why wasn't we informed all this? Everybody else was informed but us. I just see it as we're family, so we should be there. We should get to know these things.
You're saying that it's important that you know if somebody close passes away. It might not always be appropriate for people to go to the funerals, but do you think there's other things that could be done if you can't make that funeral?
In my life story, it said that my granddad was still alive, and if it weren't for my mum telling me on the last Saturday of the month saying that my granddad had died, we wouldn't have known nothing about it.
When my nan and granddad started to foster me, my dad was inside and they never told him about it, and he had no say in it. Obviously, he has a parental guidance.
Yeah, that was the same with my dad as well. He wasn't informed on much when he got locked up.
It's like, obviously, like before I was put into foster care, the social worker who we had at the time asked people if they would have all four of us, but I think some of my mum's side of the family, they didn't really ask him, because at the time my one auntie had room for all four of us, and obviously she wasn't even asked. And in some respects, I think if you've got people who have got the room, you know, they should ask everybody in the family, whether it's the dad's side of the family or the mum's side of the family.
Okay. So, Lewis, just thinking about when you lost parent, was there anything that you kept as kind of like a memory box, or any photos or information?
Yeah, I've got photos that I had taken. Like, I never received anything from any social workers, nothing like that. Or it was only things that I had, or either we went and collected from the house.
Literally, there was no support when my dad died. I didn't have nothing off him. They didn't get in touch with my dad's side of the family. The dad's side of the family didn't get in touch with me. I don't even know who like any of my dad's relations are. Didn't know much about my dad, to be honest. I had nothing. I think I had one photo from a contact centre, which got lost in my life storybook. Anyway, it's just devastating.
So you've got no photos, no mementos?
To be fair, that's like me, because I feel like even though some of my uncles and that had some of my dad's stuff as well, I think at the age we only had certain things. It's like my sister had his travel cup. I had pictures of my dad on his wedding day. I didn't really give my brothers anything. That's just like really sad. We sort of had to share it around, and it's not really fair that at the age of 18 we're still trying to get most of my dad's stuff back, so then my brothers can have some of it as well.
I mean, it's a bit like something that I've got for my mum. My granddad made this book for each one of my siblings of my mum. It's got all the memories that we've got of her, and when we went to release balloons on Mother's Day for her, we took pictures of that, put it in any message on Facebook. We got screenshots in there and everything like that. It's just a nice booklet and just memories in there.
But that's what your granddad did, not?
Yeah, my granddad made that.
So that's something that social workers could be looking to do.
I mean, my granddad did that out of his own pocket, so and that's for me and all my other siblings. He made one for everyone, and I don't even think they're that expensive either.
Social services should definitely be doing those things for family members, 100%.
Mary, what about yourself? Have you got any photos of you when you're younger?
No, I literally have like one baby photo of myself, which is embarrassing because like I've got nothing to look back on or show my children.
So do you think it's important that when people first come into care that social workers think about that, and they get some of those photos and kind of start putting that story back together.
Yeah.
So I'm working with some younger people who are sort of 13, 14, 15, and they haven't got many photos of them actually in care. And I don't know if that's because foster carers are really scared about taking pictures, but have you got some pictures of you when you're in care?
Yeah, in my situation, we had to get consent off my mum, and so depending on who they live with, like who they've got, it depends whether the mum or the dad or whoever agrees for them to have their photos taken. And because obviously we was going on holidays, and like my mum wanted some photos of us on holiday, we got them printed off, like gave them to my mum, and she was able to like get another photo album to put them in.
Yeah, that's good. So it's important, I think, to get that record, isn't it? Because there's some people who get to 18, 19, 20 and they haven't got any of those photos of holiday. So
yeah, when I was in care, there was no photos at all. And to go on from that, they never replaced like any clothes, because that's when I did my most growing for. So for like a year, there was no clothes or any allowances brought in for me.
So they didn't buy you any clothes when you were in that?
No clothes.
In those
so when I went back to my nan and granddad's, everything that I had grew out of me. So I had no clothes.
They actually took the mick out of me at school for the stuff that I was wearing, because like it was never named stuff, like more of a friends. And in this day and age, kids aren't very nice, are they? So
if you could talk a little bit about moving into your own place, could you just tell us how old you were and when you first moved away from your foster carers and what that kind of felt like?
I was like 18. I moved in with my sister and that. But I think people knew that it probably wouldn't have lasted very long, but I think it lasted longer than expected. Probably didn't last as long because like I had a boyfriend, and like people could like start to see like the bad side of it, and people just didn't like how I was speaking to them and like speaking to other people. And that's why I realised after like over a year of being with him, I like ended the relationship.
Oh, wow.
I thought it was like better off, and I don't really need a person like that.
So when you first moved you moved in with your sister?
Yeah.
So what was that like? Was it scary? Was it exciting? Was it...
Obviously, like, I was excited, but I think people knew that at one stage that we would argue and things like that.
And how did you cope with kind of like dealing with your bills and looking after the flat or whatever, you know?
My mum kind of like helped us sort all the bills out and things like that, because obviously we didn't have to worry for the first month, because Charlie paid for the first month, because that's what YPAs do when you move into your own place, and then like you just like pay the rest.
And the choice to move in with your sister, was that something that was discussed with you? Was that your choice, or was there some other options that you could have done?
Like obviously like there was other options that I could have done, but I think people was like trying to persuade me to like live on my own instead of living with my sister. But I think I made the decision far too quick to live with my sister, and I think now I'm living on my own, I regretted my first choice in the beginning.
But sometimes we have to make mistakes to learn, don't we? So
yeah.
But people kind of listened to you when you said you wanted to live with your sister and let you do that. So Mary, what about your experiences of when you left your foster carers?
I actually chose to move out at 16. I felt like I needed to have my own independence. I was ready to learn more, getting ready to move out for 18. First they was trying to get me to go into shared accommodations, hostels, but I knew from experience that is not something I wanted to do, not the path that I wanted to go down. So my social worker at the time worked with me, and we found a company that they could provide a flat in terms of I allow the support workers to come round, check on me, nightly checks, morning checks. So yeah, I actually really enjoyed that part of moving out, because obviously it's exciting at 16 having your own place, you know. The support workers were really good with me as well, like they understood certain things about me, so they'd always let me know before they come. They didn't make me feel uncomfortable. The flat was really nice as well. They'd provide food shop money or whatever weekly. I didn't have to pay for nothing, to be honest. It was all provided because I wasn't able to claim benefits then. And then the scary part for me was 18, because I moved out and I didn't realise how hard it would actually be, like especially not having people to fall back on. So like as an 18-year-old young person, obviously I got help off social services for like flooring or whatever, the £2,000 that's out by the government, which did help me out a lot. But in terms of like a 5'1.5" girl like myself, decorating a whole house on her own, painting the big long walls, not knowing how to wallpaper. I've been in my property over a year and I've changed the wallpaper like 3 times, and I've been waiting about 4 or 5 months for someone to, I've even offered to pay for someone to come and do the wallpaper. Like I think like social services services don't think of those certain things, because if you're living in a half decorated house, or you're living in, you know, a place that you don't really want to be because it's not decorated, it's not home, it's not cozy, it's not going to do your mental health no good, do you know what I mean? And then you feel like, you know, you're failing, you don't want to bring people around because it's not decorated properly, you think that people are going to pass judgment. Like, it can become like a really dark place, do you know what I mean? So like, that was a scary part for me, and like learning how to manage bills, learning how to budget. Like, I feel like when you come from the care system, you have got to grow up very quickly. For me, as soon as I hit 16, those 2 years flew by. Literally, it felt like yesterday I was 16 and I'm coming 20. It's crazy. So yeah, in certain aspects I enjoyed the 16 to 18 part, but then after 18 I just feel like it went a bit downhill, which affected my mental health. Like, I feel like I'm not doing good enough. But yeah, I feel like there should be a bit more support within decorating, like making our house an actual home rather than just dumping a child in a building with no flooring, no wallpaper, no paint. Do you know what I mean? I feel like there should be physical help, definitely, especially for kids like myself that have nobody to fall back on. So when things go wrong, there's not really no one that you can go to. Do you know what I mean? I feel like there should be a lot more support in terms of making that house as comfy for that young adult as it can be. Because if you're living in somewhere that you don't like the environment, you're not going to feel good. You're not going to wake up and feel good if you're in an environment that you don't want to be in. So yeah, I feel like they should definitely consider extra support and how certain things can affect this child's mental health, because even though I was 18 when I moved out, I still felt like a child. I did not feel like a young adult at all. Like, I feel like I was forced to grow up.
So you've spoken to me before about the support that you get until you're 18 from social care, and then how it kind of changes quite dramatically when you hit 18.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, life gets real after 18, definitely, as a care leaver, like, because the support was good in certain aspects. Like, from 16 to 18, like, had people to rely on, little things like putting a screw in the wall. Like, if you ain't got access to a drill and you don't know one with a drill, you're not putting screws in your wall, are you? Whereas like when I was 16, there'd always be someone, support worker, YPI, social worker, that would help with that. But like, you just don't get as much support, and it's scary going from having that support to not having the support, and then you don't really want to be a burden and keep asking. Like, it's just crazy. It's just like a really scary thing to go through as a young adult, feeling like that support isn't there no more, and you feel like you can't ask for too much because you're now classed as an adult. I feel like there should definitely be a bit more support and a bit more understanding as to young adults. We're not actually adults, we're young. Do you know what I mean? We're young adults, like. So I think it's definitely a scary thing.
So you said when you moved into that first place, some help with decorating and maybe some DIY stuff, putting up curtains and
little things, yeah, just little things that you don't think is going to affect this young person, but it actually does. You can have the money to buy the stuff, but if there's no one there to help you do these things, then what is the point in actually going out your way and buying this stuff? Because I know from experience, I've tried to put wallpaper up about 4 times now, and I've wasted so much money on wallpaper for my living room wall. So
how well prepared were you to move into your first place? That's for Sam as well.
I was actually with my partner at the time, so I had a lot of support of his family too, so it was really exciting for me at the time. But then the relationship broke down, that support went, there was no one really to fall back on. So yeah, like I said, it's quite scary. Like, it was exciting at the time for me because I had someone there with me, but as soon as you realise, like, okay, I'm on my own now, it is a big stepping stone to come to terms with.
I think the average age that people normally leave parental home is around 24, 25.
Yeah, I always see a lot of young people, which I'm not jealous, I'm not a high ally, I don't look my nose down at nobody, but I see a lot of young people getting things handed to them on a plate, and like, it doesn't frustrate me, but in a way I'm just like, you know what, I work my bum off literally to pay my bills, to provide gas, electric, food shop, to provide my own clothes, my own shoes. Like, it's not easy. And then like, you have certain people, like we were talking about social media the other day. In social media, you're supposed to dress to certain standards. You're supposed to be what they'd call drippy. But like, if you can't afford to do that, then you probably there is probably a passive judgment. Do you know what I mean? Like, so it's a bit frustrating seeing kids my age talking about struggle when they don't really know what struggle is. Do you know what I mean? They don't have a clue.
If both of you could give 2 top tips for other care leavers moving into their own place, Mary's straight on the mic.
If you are able to stay where you are, at your carers, at family members, even supported living, I would definitely consider it. Like, it's not a rush, it's not a race. You need to cut your size accordingly. You definitely need to think about all these things. So if you are able to stay at home or get extra support, just don't move out, don't rush. If you're ready and you feel like you're ready, do it, but it's not as easy as what is made out. So always think outside the box.
Wise words. Sam, your top tip?
I think my first top tip would be, like, if you was to like move out, make sure like you go to any budgeting like workshop. Don't rush to make a decision. Make sure that it's the right thing to do for you, and just, it's okay to ask other people for their opinion, but just make sure that you want it to be your decision, and you got to make sure that you're making the right decision for yourself.
Mary, have you got a second top tip?
It's not all sunshine and rainbows. Honestly, just make sure you're stable. Make sure you're working or you've got some sort of income coming in to help support you, because once you do it, you can't take it back. Most council properties now as well, you have to be in there for 2 years before you can actually move. So that's another point. Also, make sure, don't let nobody influence your decision. So don't move close to your friends and far from your family, because that's a mistake that I made. I moved out of the area completely to be with my partner, and that relationship broke down like 2 years after. So now I'm stuck in a house in an area that I don't really want to be in, but I can't move until another year when my 2 years is up. So definitely don't let nobody influence your decision. Like, this is like real life stuff and you're doing it for yourself, nobody else. So yeah.
I'd also like to say as well, like, if you've been in the care system and like you get on with like the foster carers like I have, always think who you want to be close to and who you've got more support from. I think I made the biggest mistake of my life.
Me too, definitely.
Like, it's like,
and it was both over boys.
And it's like I think making the biggest mistake is like making me like regret it all now, because I just know I'm in an area where I don't really know anybody, and like obviously like the only closest thing I've got is like, obviously like I know my mum's not that far, but I think like there's not really like much to do in my area, like mainly like small shops and takeaway like restaurants and things like that.
So maybe do some research on possible places where you're going to be moving to, and think about who's around, who could support you.
Yeah, and think about like who your support group is. Like where I live at the moment, no one can like get to me, sort of thing. So like it's really difficult to find.
Oh, wow.
It's like the one day I had McDonald's for my tea, and I ordered a McDonald's and it went to someone else's house and I had to get a refund for it.
So Lewis, after hearing the tips from Sam and Mary, how do you feel about moving into independent living at some point in the future?
To be honest, I don't really want to live mine. I don't feel ready. I'm staying with my family as long as I can.
So you're listening to Mary's words.
Yeah.
And
I wish that I made that decision, to be honest. So yeah, it's good.
Same.
Like,
I wish I'd never
he's
rushed
got his
into
head screwed
anything.
on. It's not fun. There's no rush to be an adult. Do not rush to move out and, pay bills and that, because it's not fun at all. At all. We make it happen because we need to, but there's so much more to life.
Yeah, live while you can.
But at some point though, Lewis, you will be moving out.
Maybe.
A massive thank you to Lewis, Mary and Sam for agreeing to co-produce this episode and talk so openly about some very difficult subjects. If you've been affected by any of the issues raised in this podcast, you can speak to your social worker or access support from online services such as Kooth, The Mix or Young Minds. This podcast was presented by myself, Darren Foley, and produced and edited by Vicki Silvester-Grant.